Hey everyone, welcome you all to India HR Live, where we broadcast a live panel discussion with the HR thought leaders and industry experts around the globe. And today we have a fantastic guest joined with us to discuss more about, the question of the hour, the existence of HR department, whether we need an HR department or not. So we will talk more about it after a while. So before that, I would like to introduce our audience, introduce our guests to all of you. First of all, I wanted to introduce Kumar Mishra. He is the VP and Head HR at Tisdale Limited. So Anil, welcome to the show, and if you can talk a little bit about yourself, that would be great.
Sure. So thanks, Nisha, for inviting and giving us this opportunity. I'm pretty excited to be part of this panel discussion. This is my 17th year of practicing HR, and this is my 7th job. I just joined this job 4 months back, and I've all through in HR and worked in all different sectors. And I'm enjoying my current role of heading the HR function for a company called Tisdale, which is close to 8,500 employee base.
Great, great. Well, we are honored to have you here with us today. And another person is Michael Vandervoort. He is one of my favorite friends over here in the United States. And he is the CEO and founder at GrowthWorks LLC. And other than that, he is a fantastic blogger also. So, Mike, welcome to the show. Talk to us a little bit about you so that our audience can learn more about you.
Thank you, Nisha. Really privileged to be here. I had a chance to visit India back in 2007 and went to Bangalore and Hyderabad and Pune and Mumbai and Delhi, and it was just a wonderful trip. It was partially business and partially vacation, so I was really excited about this opportunity. But yes, I blog. I'm an HR practitioner for over 25 years. I also work, I have my own little consulting business that I just started, but I also work at one of the largest retailers in the United States, which is a grocery store called Publix Supermarkets, which is based in Florida, and I am a manager of employee relations there. So it's really a privilege to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Wow, wonderful to have you here with us today. And I remember I saw some of the photographs that you and your family standing in front of Taj Mahal, so which is really cool to see.
Exactly.
Okay, so and the next person is Mohan Kannan. He's actually from my hometown and my place where I born. So I'm so happy to see him over here. And this is the first time interactions that I'm doing with him over the Twitter. We kind of connected, and then now we are having a virtual, in real life relation, if you can say. So Mohan is the co-founder and CEO at Godcom.com. Mohan, welcome to the show, and if you can talk a little bit about yourself, that would be fantastic.
Hey, thanks a lot, Nisha, and definitely being from Kochi, we both, Kochi and Kerala, I'm really happy that you've taken the level of social media in HR to the next level, and you've completely innovated the concept, and thanks for calling me and making me a part of this great show. I basically, I'm from an HR background, and I have more than 15 years of experience in this. For the first 9 years, I used to work with a company, a great company, in fact, called Tata Consultancy Services. And I used to be with TCS, got debuted to CMC Americas, done the whole 9 yards in various aspects of HR, right from manpower planning to generalist role. In 2008, I started my own company, and which is now 123rpo.com. And in 2013, we came together with this product called Godcom, and that's what I'm fostering right now. So I'm here in Bangalore, and thanks a lot for making me part of the show.
Wow, great. So, and there's one, if you have noticed, there's one person that's missing on our show, that is Manoj, and he is not able to join with us due to some technical glitches or technical trouble with the Google Hangout. He might join in any point of time, I guess. So without further ado, let's move on to the topic of the hour. Can a company exist without HR? That is the question, right? Well, in fact, recently, Wall Street Journal has published a post that says companies are saying no to having an HR department. So that's kind of you reminded me, okay, this can be a great topic on our show at India HR Live. And I mean, we are so blessed to have these amazing guests that have joined with us. And so let's learn from them. So Anil, what do you think? You know, we always talk about HR adding value and HR being a business partner and HR being a key role in an organization. Why don't we always have this sort of a debate? What's the reason for this very particularly? Why do we need to think to a point like, you know, can a company be operated without an HR?
My take on the subject would be, if I were to talk about typical Indian case scenario, then definitely yes, there is a need, and I don't think we can operate without HR. The reason why I make this statement is, if you look at historically our statutory system and the genesis of the so-called HR function, in 1948, we passed one act very popularly known as Factories Act of 1948. So if you look there, specifically there is a mention of so-called welfare officer. So what it states very clearly, categorically is, any organization which employs 500 or more than that number of employees on any day of the preceding 12 months, it is mandatory for the organization to have a welfare officer appointed. So that's how it has started in India. Then it took the shape of personnel and administration in most of the public sectors. And as you rightly pointed it out, then it moved to business HR. Now people have started calling it talent. So the point I'm trying to make basically is, it depends. Of course, you know, it's no rocket science, but you know, there are certain variables which would be deciding whether a company can really afford to have a HR team or not. Number one would be the size of the organization. There are many companies even in India today who are operating without having a HR team. Probably that is because they don't have much of a choice, and they want to take care of the cost optimization and rest of the other things. So, but as you move and as you grow as a larger organization in terms of number of people, and definitely, and when your objective is to take the organization to the next level of excellence, you can't afford to not have a HR team in place.
Right. So, Mike, what do you think? Can a company operate without an HR department?
I think generally no. I mean, in the United States, there are you know many sizes and many models of HR organizations, I guess, and certainly a startup company, they still have to go out and recruit talent and hire the right people, but an HR person may not be the first position that they would fill. But somebody would still be doing the work that HR does. In a company that I work for today, we employ almost 200,000 people, and so we have a very large HR function. But at the same time, we have over 1,100 retail locations, as well as manufacturing and support operations and most of the retail stores, in fact, none of the retail stores have an on-site HR person. And so the managers in those stores assume a lot of the responsibility, the day-to-day responsibility of HR, hiring, firing, but there is someone they can reach out to for advice and guidance and counseling if necessary. And so I think no matter what you did in an organization and no matter how you modeled it, someone will still have to represent the function of HR, even if a company chooses not to call it HR. There's still going to have to be somebody that worries about people issues. So at the end of the day, company can't go on without some kind of HR function in place.
Right. So Mohan, what's your take on that?
Yeah, see, I have a different way of looking at this whole concept, Mishra. I think one of I definitely, great points what Anil brought out and what Mike was talking about, but I think one of the major reasons why this topic has come up is because of the whole credibility issue with HR department. Otherwise, that's my take. Otherwise, this will not come up. I don't think it is a cost issue at all. I think it has to do a lot with credibility here. Number one, that's my take on that. Second is whether an organization can be successful or can it survive without an HR department. My answer is yes, because we need to look at the size of the company. Now, when we look at and what is the size of the company where you need an HR person to come in. Now, when you look for smaller size of companies, like Mike said, the HR position is not the first position people are trying to kind of fulfill. Like, for example, my company with Godcom and 123 RPO and BP Works, we are around 150 people in 3 locations. We don't have an HR department, neither we have an HR person. I've outsourced all my recruitment. I've outsourced all my statutory compliance. Anil, Anil and all from a different genre of people who talk about IDA Act 1947, the difference between a workman and a worker, and what happened to the Tirupati Laddu case, and what Justice Krishnaiyer did, and all that. Because today, Anil, we both know if we quiz on all these acts to even our team members in HR, nobody even knows these things. The reason is they don't need to know it. Today, HR does not handle these issues anymore because it is outsourced. Statutory was one of the first things to be outsourced. Okay. Now, when you look at different departments, let me give a completely different perspective to this. Like in 20 years back, when I was in TCS in 96, 97, 98, every company in America used to have a computer department, and they used to have mainframe workers, they used to have a lot of people in Java and so on. Today, you only have a CIO, and you have IBM and Quansys and CSC and TCS and Infosys working with them, because outsourcing has taken a lot of work away. Because for a company like Tesco, IT is not their core strength. Retailing is their core strength, right? So they don't want to handle anything which is not their core strength. So, for example, if you take recruitment, if you take statutory compliance, if you take many of the things like separation or anything, it is all outsourceable. So what happens is from the small company, when it becomes a larger company, like for example, if my company goes to the next level, I would most probably hire a very experienced HR director, experienced person, maybe 10, 12 years of experience, and invest in him because he can take care of the rest either by adding people under him from a trainee level or outsourcing many of the work which needs to be outsourced, right? So this is where I think where the HR department is going in future. Now, the other side of the cake is we have traditional companies who've been growing up to 200,000 and 300,000 and so on, which has got a lot of fat HR departments sitting, right? And that's where the whole credibility factor comes in. And I think that's where this whole debate started about, is the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is really interesting because Anil and Mike have holistically said no to these companies not having an HR department. No, we cannot do that. But on the other hand, Mohan is saying about outsourcing. So to our audience, to help them out, it would be really great if you can talk about what are some of the aspects that they should, from an organizational point of view, that they should consider at what point that they should outsource HR department if they have a chance to, or if they have a, as you said, the budget sort of problems. And if while that outsourcing factor, there are so many things to be considered because we are dealing with people, not just what we say is a product or a resources. It's a human being. So what are some aspects that you really need to see and evaluate while selecting that HR third party as an outsourcing consultant or outsourcing organization? My question. Mohan, would you like to take that?
No, I can take that question. Yeah. Again, Mishra, from this aspect also, I have a different way of looking at it. The whole myth about HR is about the customer is the people is a myth. HR is there to ensure that the business gets best out of the bunch of people they have in the organization. HR should definitely, get the best out of the organization and then take it up to the next level to ensure that the business goals are met. So, of course, we're dealing with people. That is definitely yes. But we need to ensure that the business goals are met. So HR as a department, the director, HR director, and the rest of them have to ensure that the business goals are met. I think that's where the outsourcing factor comes in.
I think that, I think, Mohan, that your outsourcing point is a really good one. And I guess that's when I said that there were a number of different business models. I don't think that you have to have an HR function. In other words, I don't think you have to have an HR director. You don't have to have a director of talent. You don't have to have an employee relations director. You have to have someone in-house who ensures that the issues that relate to people are handled properly. And to your point, in your organization, you've outsourced a lot of that, but somebody still made the decision, whether that's you or some subordinate of yours, and you still look at the work the vendor does and the services they provide, because you can't just like tuck that away on a shelf and forget about it, or you'll not have stability and talent in place. So you have to make sure that the outsourced person provides the right kind of services. You may not be managing them daily, but you haven't eliminated HR from your organization. You've found a different way to source it, basically, in my opinion.
Correct. You're right. Absolutely right.
Yeah. Just, I thought, the theme of our discussion is, can an organization operate without HR function? So from that standpoint, my take would be most of the organizations, they might not have a designated HR department. However, the roles are very much in existence. Whether HR folks that do it, or that has been given to admin, or maybe in some cases CIO and CEOs, they also manage this function, and that is more prevalent in smaller organizations. But as you move up in the ladder, when you have a larger number of people to deal with, then definitely organizations, they have a designated HR team. Now, going back to Mohan's point on outsourcing, I think that's a good point to actually think about. However, most of the times organizations, they outsource activities like payroll system. But anything that requires employee touch point, anything that requires understanding the culture aspect of an organization, I think it makes a lot of sense to have an in-house HR person rather than outsourcing these critical activities to an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Mohan.
Yes, I really agree, Anil. That is where where I was taking a cue from the IT side of things, how outsourcing grew in the IT side. To I think that wave is going to ride on the HR side too. Already we see a lot of things happening with Aon Hewitt and the other kind of people in the world who are taking a lot of work out and doing this. Of course, payroll, statutory compliance, and all those things are the first towers which have come out. Recruitment and training, so on, has come out. But definitely in the future, where I see is a HR department, even for a larger organization, they're going to have more people on the top layer who are directly interacting with the executive management. Okay, so today we have a kind of a pyramid where you have an HR director or a small number of people there, one or two people, and you have a huge middle management and a lot of trainees out here or HR executives here. Where we're going to have is where I'm thinking it's going to be a flatter layer which is directly interacting with the executive, directly interacting with the businesses, and then a lot of these subsystems below that is going to be outsourced, and definitely a lot of vendors and a lot of HR executives under this which is going to come in. I think the whole middle layer is where the change is going to come in, and I think this is where the new HR structure is going to be in companies.
Yeah.
Right. Well, another thought that I wanted to add with you all is when we talk about whether to have an HR department or not, I've read tons and tons of content saying, even I did a poll at Facebook group, and most of the people, they have said small companies are choosing not to have an HR department in that initial stage of their organization's existence. So what do you consider? Because during that time, during that initial stage, even if it is a smaller organizations, they are totally relying on their managers to kind of solve any sort of employee issues or people issues when it comes to managing their workforce. So what do you see is the value that managers bring to the table? Mike, would you like to?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in my organization, we rely on our managers heavily because, as I mentioned earlier, many of our sites are remote from I mean, we're spread out over several hundred miles, and each store manager runs a business that's the equivalent of a multi-million-dollar small business. So they make most of the HR daily decisions in their store just as they would as if they were a plant manager or something in a manufacturing circumstance, and that's very reasonable. We couldn't afford as an organization to put an HR person in every store. They wouldn't be busy enough. So we have one person who covers like 70 retail stores in a big manufacturing facility where we have a couple thousand of hourly employees. Then we usually have a person on site that handles all their issues, across for that one location. So our model varies within our business. I think the other thing that we're seeing is some transformation in who's responsible for HR. At least in the United States, in a number of cases, you started to see a mix of HR and legal functions, or organizations are asking people to come in who have a legal background, because that helps kind of to get to, I think, to echo Mohan's point, it helps flatten out the organization and kind of take a layer out. So they're slowly combining functions. And then I think the third thing we're seeing is somewhat what Mohan is also talking about, is there are a number of organizations that are becoming virtual organizations, smaller companies that that really don't really have a management team at all. They outsource all their work, and this is mostly in the tech end. So they rely on virtual workforce, whether it be in India or China or Vietnam and other places, and therefore, but they still have to select the talent that they hire. So there's still somebody that's doing a piece of HR work even there. So.
Yeah, I think Mishra, one of the greatest points which you mentioned, I thought I'll bring it later in the show. Some of the finest HR folks I've seen are the line managers. Okay. I mean, line managers really rule the roost in any kind of organization, because they are directly affected by the business, whether it is a plant manager or whether it's a retail general manager, or even if it's a hotel general manager, the F&B manager, or any of the line managers who are there. Because when I see it, because over a period of time, and maybe that's the reason why I've not read this article which you're referring to in Wall Street, but I kind of get the echoing the point, because many of the times the person who's really involved with the problem is the line manager, and mostly the HR person is kind of aloof from the problem because because of various issues. And I've seen that in my team when I was working. I've seen that everywhere, and it's there. It's truth. And so these people actually do much more from an HR perspective to the employee. And now if we really take even a survey among a company asking, who really solved your problems, I mean, we'll be really, flabbergasted to see they'll talk about their line managers who solve the problems and the HR departments who solve the problems, right? So that is also another thing. One is the kind of outsourcing which is happening, plus the real people with real grit who are sitting there as line managers do a lot of the HR function and the leadership functions. I think that is also one of the reasons why in a lot of cases a lot of activities of HR can be taken on.
Well, that's really great, as you said, the line manager's role. And I would say, yeah, they are the first persons when employee has any problem with any sort of work-related environment, even if it is work or even if it is personal that he or she would like to share. Yes, managers are the first person to reach out to. And when it comes to building an engaged workforce, managers has a great role. But at this time, managers taking the HR role, when I'm talking in a smaller organization, especially they don't have an HR department for namesake, but still they have the managers who are taking all the responsibilities of an HR function. How can we rely on managers to fully solve the people issues? And what do you think? Can you rely on them completely or blindly, or do you see any sort of skill sets are lacking and they would need to improve on?
Yeah, I think any organization for that matter, it is not practically possible to have, let's say, for 8,000 employee-based company, to have 800 HR people who would be on the floors dealing all employee queries or employee concerns. Basically the idea is why HR exists today is they need to ensure that they enable the people managers, the business managers, to deal with employee queries. Practically, it is unfair to expect HR to be there at solving all the queries. That's why we have people managers, business managers acting as HR person. So one thing we need to keep very clear in the back of our mind is if you do not sensitize them and what is your core focus? Do you want them to focus more around their core activities? Because people aspect would be non-core for them. They don't drive people agenda. They are there to drive, let's say, sales or technology or whatever it may be. And how well we can enable them. So it is HR is no longer a picnic planner. It has moved to picnic planner to strategic business partner. So in that context, it is very important that HR plays the role of enabling the business managers to play their roles well. Be it the hiring practices, be it contemporary talent management practices, be it compensation benchmark, or be it any other strategic HR decisions. If you train them, if you sensitize them, and if you feel that these are the people who are passionate about even driving people agenda, then why not?
Great. Well, I wanted to stress on that training aspect, as you said. How do you see the need for developing leadership skills in an organization? What do you see happening among organization when it comes to developing the leadership skills of the managers? Mike, would you like to take that? Because you.
I mean, I think it's one of the most critical investments you can make, and in fact, it's one of the strategic things that we do. Much of the role of HR in my company is to provide that type of training and support to thousands of supervisors, and in order to send them forth so they can do, as Anil just described, to kind of be the touch point, the first contact, and that role is critical. But those supervisors need to know how to deal with those, but they still have to, you still have to have someone behind them, both that provide help when it's needed, and I think also to make sure that you're not missing the other side, which is often the employee. You can't just have the manager making the decision. Someone has to kind of keep that supervisor honest as well, as an advocate for the employee. So.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mike, because I remember you wrote some particular post about sexual harassment at workplace. So if this is sort of a sensitive issues like all this sexual harassment or
Right.
anything that happens with a lawsuit, how do you think a manager should react to that sort of sensitive issues?
Well, we expect our managers, A, not to do that kind of thing, and B, if it's reported, of course, then they need to follow. I mean, they need to take action, but at least in our company, because there is an HR function, it goes up the ladder to a neutral organization that then steps in to kind of take it out of the context of the immediate floor. But the important thing is that manager knows what to do if something like that is brought to their attention.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Mohan.
Yeah, Nisha, I think one of the good points which came about here is the training, which is the aspect from the HR side, and I think that is one aspect where once you go beyond a particular thing in a company, where you need to have somebody who's going to be full time taking care of that. I mean, from my perspective, one of the first things I would look at it, even if we have a director of HR position, the person should be able to completely bring the person to the next level. Like as Larry Bossidy used to say, 40% of his time as a CEO went in developing people. And we always say, even in our organization, that even the line manager has to develop the rest of the people and coming up. So somebody who takes care of that angle, where you invest a lot on the training aspect, that is going to be very, very important. And that is one of the key areas of HR which will have a real problem outsourcing also from a long-term perspective. Of course, including sexual harassment training can be outsourced, Mike, according to me, because it's a legal thing and all that. But how do you really behave in the organization? What is the culture of the organization? That is something which can't be outsourced. I mean, that's something which you really need the HR department and the HR guys to take it to the next level. I think that's where training is a very, very important point for a HR department that way.
Right.
Yeah. I think Mohan brought a nice point and a very valid one. And I think we also believe that this is no rocket science, and business managers, they can be trained, but When it comes to life skills or the basic people skills, that's fine. Even we do have a posh policy in place, which is prevention of sexual harassment thing, and very categorically it has been informed to our business managers that when you face any such statutory stroke legal related challenges, please do not act anything. Just your role would end. Your role is only expected role is just bring it to the notice of this committee members, because things like sexual harassment would be much more sensitive issue, and we would not want the whole world to know about it, and definitely not the reporting manager for more than one reason. But other things like how do we coach, how do we give performance feedback, how to run effective interview sessions, on those skills definitely we can train our people, our business managers. But when it comes to statutory, we very clear cut we have defined that please, your role would end once you inform it to HR or the related committee members, purely because of the sensitivity nature.
Right. And another thought that I really wanted to discuss when this topic has come up is, if we consider the workforce, we have like what, 5 generations are there in the workforce, like baby boomers are there, and Gen Y, and then millennials are getting into the workforce. So all sorts of what would I say, differences are there among us, diversity is there among us, and the way we work and the way we deliver is also different. Because if you see millennials, they are interested in probably bringing their own device and probably doing everything on a fingertip, probably with an app, probably with a, what would I say, probably on their iPhone or whatever. But when it comes to baby boomers, they really want to have the process in place, and they want to get the details, get done. So what do you think the future workforce expect from HR? If we talk about, yes, HR is there at their organization, what do you think they would expect from the HR in future? Mike, would you like to take?
We have five generations in our workforce, and one of the things we're confronting now is that some of the strategies that we put in place for incentive and motivation, we have a lot of incentive programs and bonus programs, and what motivates a boomer with their work ethic doesn't motivate Gen X or millennials. And we find that sometimes because of the way we hire, we may have a shift of third shift manufacturing employees who are mostly millennial and a day shift of boomers. And so therefore you have actually different strategies in place on different shifts. And the HR function in our company plays a pretty big role in working cooperatively with the supervisors to make sure that they're able to implement those types of policies without going too far afield, from shift to shift, because you can get into some friction if there's perceived favoritism or differences. So that's one thing, to come back on your point of millennial or generations in the workforce.
Right. Anil, would you like to add some of your thoughts?
Sure. So the kind of company I come from, if you look at the average age, it is in the range of 21 to 25. And I believe, in future, we got to be empowering them much more. We have to give them access to so-called social sites, and you got to be also flexible when it comes to the working hours. Gone are those days, when you confine them to a workplace for 8 hours or 9 hours. They want flexibility, probably a break in between, 4 hours, and then I can go home and can again come after 4-5 hours. And I think too much of monitoring at workplace is also something which puts them off. And these are the things, normally, when we did a kind of a survey, then, people have mentioned that these are some of their expectations. I think this is the future, and we need to be quite sensitive about their requirements, their needs, their expectations. And if you don't provide them, then probably attrition is only going to go higher.
Yeah, Nisha, just to add on to what Anil said, even I work in an industry which is on the millennial side. Our average age of employee is again around the 23, 24. I think mentally I'm also around there. I wish to be physically around that age. Yeah, and we work in a high technology environment in BP Works and in Godcom, and where we get, I mean, we work on platforms which are just, really cutting edge platforms. So the expectations these people have currently, if you ask me now, I play a lot of role as a CEO, but from an HR perspective, I kind of deal with their queries on various things. Even my program manager deals with a lot of queries on various things and so on. But one of the requirements I'm seeing for the past 6 years, noticing from the millennials, is that they want their problem solved. Many of even in my generation, like I'm a 75 born, we were okay if some of our problems were not solved when we started off, because we kind of took it, yeah, maybe that's how it is, that's how it works. But the new age guys, they really don't get it. Sometimes it doesn't work, just like somehow Google Hangout is not working, because it just has to work. Because if it just doesn't work, I know what's happening, right? The yo attitude and all that, the whole thing goes topsy-turvy. And the compensation plan, whatever we put, incentive, nothing works because one small issue is not taken care of. Now, here is where, even if we have the HR person or anybody, it needs to be a team, the team of the line managers, HR, all put together, kind of solving this problem for them. They have the BYOD schemes, they have a lot of schemes, but they want it faster and by Friday. So the policy is what we have from a HR perspective. The vision, what we have from an HR perspective, has to be from that perspective. So if I don't take care of one small issue, which I'm sure Anil is facing the same problem all the time because he has a similar kind of workforce, I'm facing attrition, and that is even before the person started becoming productive. Okay, so that's really going to show up on the bottom line, and so that's the problem which you're going to be facing, and HR has to be extremely nimble for that. So archaic processes, archaic things, just has to go. The new age thing has to come in the HR processes and procedures.
Well, that's really interesting to hear your perspective. Well, to our audience, they are really posting all of your thoughts that you have shared, and yes, thank you so much to all of you for joining with us and helping us spread the word, and I hope you all are enjoying. If you have any questions, tweet your questions with a hashtag in the HR Live on Twitter, or post it on our Facebook page or Google Plus Hangout, or on YouTube channel as well, so that way we can pull that up and ask that question to our guest. So Mohan, I really like that thought that you shared, the role of a manager when it comes to customizing the approach if they are dealing with millennials or if they are dealing with baby boomers. But finally, the thought that comes to mind is, how do we fix the problem, right? That's the final thought when it comes to delivering a work or delivering a project. So what do you see are some of the challenges when it comes to having a diverse workforce in an organization in that initial stage? Let me say, if it is a small business, they don't have an HR department at that point, but specifically in that initial time, they have hired all sorts of employees. Didn't have something in their mind. Something called, culture fit, but they have hired all the employees that they really wanted to have. So what can be some of the challenges in that initial time?
Yeah, I mean, you're asking me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. See, I'll tell you my experience, right? So I started from scratch in 2008. I was the head of HR in CMC Americas, and I just started off with just me and the open sky and one small office. And then we started and we grew up now, along with the merger right now, which has happened, we're around 150 employees in 3 locations. And we don't have an HR department. And first of all, it's because I was an HR guy, so I was like, okay, if at all a problem happens, I'll handle it. Mm-hmm. But one of the major issues, what we see from a challenge perspective, is to set the culture right. Mm-hmm. And I have seen, I've seen 3 different cultures. I've seen TCS, I've seen CMC, which is a Government of India company, and I was deputed to CMC Americas, so I've seen the American culture and American organization, and this organization was a Louisiana-based organization, so I've seen the Southeast American culture, and I really like dwelling in the culture and so on. So I wanted to set up a culture for my company. So usually I've seen, when you even work with other companies, the culture of the company comes from the executive of the company. I mean, usually it follows the CEO's culture or the person who's driving the company. I mean, Just Dial, of course, would have a kind of a culture with the CEO set in. It can be rigid, it can be process oriented, it can be fun. We have set up a very fun kind of an environment in our kind of a company where people just come up and speak to us, and there is no kind of a hierarchy and so on, which has worked to a lot of extent. For us. And creating the culture was very important for me, because I was taking a lot of people from lateral hire. So there were people who came from bigger companies like Wipro and all that, and we had people who was from startups. So mixing the culture was one of the most important thing. And of course, financial strains in a startup is always there. So other than that, from a HR side, definitely creating the culture was one of the most important things for us, for my small businesses.
And I would agree. It really doesn't matter the size of your organization. Having a strong culture where you stick to the values, kind of know the very core of your business is critical for success. I think companies that lose that will eventually lose their way. I know in my own family, my wife started a business, a tech business, about 8 years ago. And she started it in her bedroom, and she hired one employee, and then she hired another, and she got big enough a year later to move to an office. And the whole core of her business was to have a place where they could work but still have lives. And that's so there was kind of a work ethic in place, that they had to work really hard, but that they also understood that they had to get time to get off. And that company eventually grew to 25 people. Never was an HR person in place. We outsourced some HR function, payroll and such, because she needed to spend her time elsewhere. And that's actually why we wound up in India on our visit, was because she was also hiring augmented technical talent to handle big surges in growth in your country. So there's a number of ways you can do it. She never had HR. She just had me to help part-time. So that was the way she cracked that.
Right. Well, to a follow-up question that I wanted to ask at this point to Mohan, as you said, to that culture aspect, I'm sure with the points that Mohan and Mike and Anil shared, yes, culture, if it matters, even if it is a startup or even if it is a smaller organization, start right from the beginning itself. So, Mohan, you said about the culture is totally based on the leadership. So, what do you think does the organization culture change when the leadership changes?
Yeah, I think it does change when the leadership changes, and that is the time when so many people quit. When there is a merger and acquisition, if I remember my statistics right, around 30% of the people have quit when an M&A happens with the old organization within the first 12 months, and that's basically because they cannot take on the culture of the new company. And this happens in various places too, not only in organizations. It happens even in political situations and so on. So that is why it is very important for us to keep it right. For example, like what Mike said, the value of the company. Like for example, we run a 24-hour shop. Okay, the last employee leaves at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the first employee comes in at 8 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I'm sitting here and talking with you nice folks, but there are people out there sitting and working. Now, how do I know that these people are working, or how these things were happening when I just had a handful of 10 employees? It's the trust I have in them. Maybe traveling, or the manager may not be there, people may not be there. People are actually working there and actually doing a good job. So the trust, the integrity, and all that is very important. And it is not that we have absolutely no micromanagement and so on. So imagine if I'm not there, somebody else comes in and say, if he's a taskmaster, I say my guys are like Ben-Hur's horses. I don't think any one of those people will be there. I mean, Ben-Hur's horses. That's how we always treat these guys, so that we don't need a masala to come and whip them up. So that that's the kind of culture we're talking about.
Yeah, I think the problem is when specifically in organizations the culture is driven by an individual. That is the beginning of the problem. So we need to ensure that each and everyone demonstrates the right values in an organization. Probably people leave, there is mass exodus even we have seen in senior leadership levels. That is probably because of the fact that I'm in a comfort zone. So I know the working style of a specific leader, and I enjoy being with him. And when he or she moves out of an organization, I would definitely want to get associated, and hence I decide to move out. The point I'm trying to make here is it is suicidal when we leave the entire culture driving aspect to one individual or two individual. It has to be reflected across organization, irrespective of rank and file. Everybody need to understand what are the value systems the organization wants to drive, and everyone got to demonstrate those values. We need to reward, appreciate if somebody is demonstrating the values right at that point in time, and we also need to reprimand somebody who is not following it up. But everyone need to collectively take this culture to the next level.
Right. Well, that's really an interesting insights from everyone. And so I'm here looking at the questions from our audience on the Twitter stream. The first question, I'm taking it from Me Too. She is also one of the writers at India HR Live. She is asking, what could be the potential risks if organizations decide to eliminate HR department and give charge to line managers? Mike, would you like to answer that?
I think the question was, what are the threats if HR was eliminated?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, you broke up a little bit. Sorry.
Okay.
I think the first thing, at least in the U.S., would be the worries about legal compliance, because if line managers aren't properly trained and knowledgeable enough, they may not know the things that they need to worry about simply because they don't know them. So I think if an organization engages that type of strategy, they have to make sure that they've invested in the appropriate training to get people to become at least somewhat experts on topics that normally they wouldn't deal with, or they have to provide service elsewhere from a legal department or something like that.
Right. And the next question, and this is to Mohan. Her Twitter handle is Asompi. She's asking, why should an organization outsource HR functions? I know this question should be asking to you, so that's why. What about privacy?
Okay, what about privacy here in this Google Hangout, first of all, right? Privacy is the thing which is going to be diminishing in the future. Of course, definitely there are issues like sexual harassment and other things which we talked about earlier, which are extremely sensitive points which needs privacy. But I think, various other things of an individual does not require a privacy. For example, in the United States, we have a very clear background check. You put an SSN, we get a lot of things out which are public, and those things can be public. But in India, especially, it's because of our lack of infrastructure and so on, we don't have so much of information available. Our background check companies have a very tough time because we don't have so much of processes in background checking and so on. So privacy is something, of course, definitely if there are very health-related issues, if there are issues related to sexual harassment, any of those sensitive stuff, definitely outsourced personnel handling it is going to be a problem, and that has to be a legal company which to handle that. And of course, these things are handled by lawyers, and in that there is a client attorney confidential. You're again outsourcing it to a lawyer. You're not handling it yourself. Okay, so that is there. But for the rest of the things which I'm talking about in outsourcing, for example, payroll, for example, compensation and benefits, and talking about including recruitment and induction and so on, and even training to a large extent, there is no privacy issues which is coming in there. And let me tell you, in future, privacy is going to be one thing which is going to be diminishing, and it is going towards the asymptote.
Right. So Anil, the next question is from Abhineet. He is asking, can a company with matrix structure operate without HR?
That's an interesting question. I think anything and everything that we do in HR got to be quantified, and we all need to know what good looks like when we talk about HR. So in that context, I think it works better if we have an in-house HR team rather than outsourcing activities. As Mohan rightly pointed it out, there are some non-core activities, let's say payroll management or leave management or hiring or training solutions. These are the activities which we can outsource, yet we can have a metric around it to evaluate how impactful those services they have been. I think, yeah, it does make a sense to outsource some of the activities, but it is very important to have quantified to know how and what good looks like in that context.
So, do you suggest any particular points at that time they should consider? Okay, these are some areas that they should consider, to outsource, or these are some areas that, yes, in-house HR should definitely be looking.
Things like recruitment, let's say, where, we can quantify turnaround time to have somebody onboarded. So these are some of the activities with quantification with the right kind of a metric we can actually outsource. However, things like when it comes to driving a value or a corporate culture, it is very, very difficult to quantify. And when you outsource, probably management would say this is a feel-good kind of a program, but very difficult for me to quantify or to assess the positive impact of such intervention.
Well, in fact, one person has already asked that question. His name is Kumar. PB. He has asked what are the major HR activities which can be outsourced and any activity which shouldn't be outsourced. So thank you for answering that. Mike or Mohan, would you like to share any other thoughts that you would want to add to that question?
I think that there are some other metrics that, like relating to the cultural point, it is more difficult to track, but you can certainly look at some traditional stuff like turnover or the number of complaints. Most organizations do an employee survey, opinion survey of some sort, and you can see the rise and fall of the opinion of your employees based on that if you do it on an annualized basis. So there are a lot of other things that you could draw info from to kind of see how your culture is holding up.
Yeah.
Right. And the next question is from Kunjal. He is asking, does the CEO need an HR head or person who has HR background? Mohan, would you like to take it?
Yeah, what's the question again?
Does the CEO need an HR head or person who has HR background?
Oh yeah, of course. Like I said, and that must be from Kunjal Kamdar, right?
Correct.
Following him on Twitter.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely think that at a given point in time, right now we're definitely looking at the next 20 or 30 people on board, and I think we definitely need that. We're at the breaking point of getting one person in. And again, where I'm looking at is it would be a person who would be able to do the kind of activities like what I was saying, right? I mean, like whatever can be outsourced should be outsourced, but whatever needs to stay in needs to be staying in. Of course, Anil and I disagreed on who sets the culture, but thankfully in my company I have the way of setting the culture. And definitely, I would like to look at the outsourceable parts to be outsourced and the rest to be kept in. But I would definitely look at an HR head definitely in future, and that person should be able to have this kind of a thinking, so that, like I told you, we have people who want it faster, and by Friday. So the HR person should be able to think even before the millennial guy is talking about, even before he thinks about what is the next version of iPhone which is coming in. The policy should be so futuristic. So that's where we'll be taking it from. And of course, yeah, we'll be doing that.
Right. Well, we are about to wrap up the show, but to wind up, it can be a wonderful last question to each one of you. We always talk about innovation, right? So how can HR be innovative in what they do? And the question to all. So Anil, would you like to take first, and then after Mike and Mohan?
Yeah, I think when we talk about innovation, we need not think about a step change or inventing a new process. Maybe wherever our current system is or processes are, how do we make a quantum jump? How do we make a continuous improvement? Whatever it is right now, how can I make life of my colleagues easier by adding probably a couple of characters here and there? That is the starting point. And probably if we have that kind of a behavior, value behavior driven across organization, in long run we might also get on to inventing a couple of new processes in people area.
Right. Mike?
I think that, I think one of the things that HR departments lack sometimes, the good ones seem to have a sense of vision, what's coming, what trends are developing, and they start to develop their strategies around those things to stay out in front of them. So it's maybe a little bit of reactive innovation, but at least they're moving. And I would point to, for example, the way social media has evolved in the HR function over 5 years. In the U.S., many social HR people were very resistant to adopt social media in any way, and now those that didn't kind of find themselves, I think, a little bit behind the curve. So we need to be better at looking what's further out and not what's immediately in front of us, which is often the challenge.
Right. Mohan.
Yeah, I think, Nisha, great question. Innovation. Innovation, from an HR perspective, a lot of people try to innovate for the sake of innovation. Okay, and that is why we have a lot of jargons coming up here, there, every new time. And HR is like full of fads with these kind of jargons. That's because everybody's trying to innovate and give a old wine in the new bottle. But what I'm trying to say is, truly, if a person, this is my experience, truly, if a person wants to innovate from an HR department or from a HR practitioner's point of view in a business, I would love him or her to work with the business and really understand how many HR persons go to a plan manager or even to a customer. Like, for example, Anil, somebody from your team going to the actual paying customer of Just Dial, and from an HR perspective ask, what would you like for me to do in HR so that something else is better for Just Dial? Do people ask that? I've done that in my company, going in, from an HR perspective, and the customer will say, this particular thing sucks. You really need to bring a lot of training in this particular area, and then we take it from there. So from all these kind of point where HR goes and be with the business. So there is definitely a change agent kind of a role which HR needs to be playing, and not only the administrator role. And once he does that, management is going to take notice of people like that, and you're going to be working more with the management. Like when I tell people, you need to work with the business, you need to understand the business, and people say, no, we don't get the time, or we don't get, people don't take us seriously. I'm not there in the boardroom. CEOs don't talk to us. I said, that's not a reason. Nobody gave anybody a chance. Like, you're talking about innovation. Nisha, look at you. How innovative is this, what you're doing? I've never seen anybody like you, Rakshita Dwivedi and Tanvi are all people whom we just know through this social media. How innovatively you've taken the platform, done so many shows, right? It is not that you wanted to innovate because something came by the way and you said, this is a great strategy. This is how I can take it. You've made a completely new blue ocean out of it, right? And this is what I want, or from my HR guys, this is what I want from my HR director. If I hire one in the future, this is what I want. I want them to really reach out instead of telling me, oh, in this performance appraisal, instead of 10 points, we need to have 9 points and all that. That's where the future needs to go, and that's where innovation needs to go. Over to you.
Yeah, I think I fully agree with Mohan's point of view this time. For the simple reason that when you go to business managers, he's absolutely nailed it. Like business would tell, fine, you are innovating, that's fine, but it's not a white paper you're planning to publish. Tell me how it is going to create value for me. To give you an example, suppose attrition in an organization is quite high, and that is a concern. That the manager, if I can go, or any of my HR colleague can go and talk to business and understand what are the potential triggers, what is that we can do by joining hands and try and understand and address those queries, so that the attrition next time onwards is relatively less. So that is a typical example where we can really enhance our credibility, and business would really value that, and that is innovation.
Well, that's great. Interesting insights that people can really, go ahead and try it out. So we have about 1 more minute at this point. I really wanted to make you, utilize that. So if you can share if you can share a word, what should be the one thing that HR should stop doing? Mike.
Being traditional.
My take on this would be stop throwing your rule book and enable business to get things done.
Right. And Mohan?
View business as a different entity and think HR is a different entity.
Oh, great.
They need to understand where the payroll comes from.
All right, so thank you so much, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure to have you all here, and it's been a fantastic conversation that we can, keep on going. But we have only 1 hour, and thank you so much for being here with us. And I'm sure our audience must have enjoyed it, and look forward to having you once again soon on the HR Live
Thank
Show.
you very much.
Thank you, Nisha. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Mohan.
Hey, thanks a lot. Nice meeting you guys.
Likewise.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, nice meeting you all. And to our audience, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please go ahead and subscribe it so you won't miss any of our future shows. And thank you so much to all of you for being here with us. We won't be able to do the show without you all. We will talk to you all next show. Bye-bye.